much. I'm not speaking properly tonight. Tonight's a night off. But James has twisted my arm, and as you all know, James is very persuasive and a very effective organiser. So here I am, just briefly. One piece of news, literally, absolutely hot off the press. Simon Darby phoned me about 5 minutes ago to say that the first edition of the Sunday Times is out, and the Sunday Times bears the shocked news that I'm going to be on Question Time in about a month. Or not, as the case may be. What it actually means is the BBC decided they have to bite the bullet and put me on Question Time, which raises two possibilities. One is that everyone else will refuse to go on. And then it's an interesting one for the BBC. Do they have me on alone to make the point that no platform is a nonsense? Or do they say in the end, well, sorry about that. So we'll see what the BBC will do. Up until now, the BBC has always said, once under pressure like that, or using it as an excuse, well, no one else will share a platform with the BNP, so sorry, you can't come on. And the BBC, during the election in Manchester, the BBC local radio in the whole of the Northwest were faced with this dilemma, and they actually showed a little bit of backbone and principle. Not totally, but they, in the end, said, well, you've got to be on, and they reached a deal with the other parties. They said he's going to be on, but in the end, I was in one studio and they were in the other. So they didn't have to share a which is pretty unbelievable. So how are they going to do it at Question Time? I don't know. So you might get, well, Question Time coming to you tonight from, Ludlow in Shropshire and Bradford, where we have Mr. Griffin, the British. And that, of course, is the other possibility. And if they do something like try and say, yes, you're on, but it's Bradford or Luton or Birmingham, we'll probably say no. Be sensible, be responsible. We don't want you to put us on in Burnley, our heartland. Well, there's a logic to that. Yes. Just put us on somewhere which just represents Britain as a whole, instead of something just crazy where there will be a riot and we'll get the blame, even though it's not us causing the trouble. But anyway, watch this space because it is in tomorrow's Times. I don't know where they got the exclusive from. That will be a story which runs and runs and runs over the next few weeks, and it's a sign that we've made some progress, and it is, to you all over the country, to groups of people like you who've plodded away at grassroots level, and that's what's made the difference. So well done to you, because it's the party's victory, it's not mine. But we're getting there. Now, the next thing, I don't know whether it's going to break, talk a little bit more about news, whether it's going to break in the English papers, I don't know, but the Scottish press is absolutely hysterical yesterday and today with a British National Party story. And the Daily Record, which is a particularly unpleasant rag up there, I think it might be in the Mirror stable actually, which should account for a great deal. Ran a story yesterday, ex-servicemen's charity forced to take BNP money. Like we've got along here, we found an ex-serviceman and we twisted his arm around his back, take our money or...
I've seen that.
Yes, and what this actually is this is a fella, he's an ex-serviceman himself, and he's been so shocked by the number of ex-squaddies sleeping rough on the streets of Glasgow because there's no homes for them, and the fact that the government, the Scottish government, the local authorities, the British Legion, no one will do anything for them. He got so sick of it that he did something and he set up a day centre for these chaps. He's aiming to set up a proper barracks type refuge where they can sleep decently at night as well. But for now he's got a day centre, and he approached the Labour Party, the Labour government. He approached the SNP government in Scotland asking for help. None of them would lift a finger. He had a choice between giving these chaps a lunch day after day or paying the meagre rent on this council property. So he gave his chaps lunch for a couple of weeks, and then the councillor said, well, you're behind with your rent, we're going to throw you out. So he went to everybody, and then one of our people, he's quite a successful businessman in Glasgow, but Steve's not a multi-millionaire, our chap, but he went along a couple of weeks ago, once this fellow was saying he's just desperate, he gave him £3,000 of his own money, and then he arranged with a group of his friends to collect building materials to do this place up, for about £25,000 worth apparently. So they've really made a difference, and no one else has lifted a finger for them. And then the Labour Party is now saying, the Labour Council there, well, we're definitely going to close it now because you've been taking BNP money. Which in fact he hasn't. They've taken money from members and supporters of the British National Party, helping ex-servicemen because they're decent human beings, not because nothing to do with the BNP. So it's become an enormous story up there, and the fellow running this, he's torn between, well, basically killing himself because he's desperate, or accepting the BNP wholeheartedly. He's considering sending the veterans out with their medals, handing out copies of freedom to make a protest about what Glasgow Council is doing, try to shut it down. It's an enormous story north of the border, it really is. Now what will happen I'm not sure, but we're looking for ways to bring this story and this initiative south of the border, because you can't go to a major city without finding our people sleeping rough on the streets. And when you actually look into it, the majority of the young males, or not so young, they're actually ex-squaddies, which is an absolute disgrace and a shame on this country. This government particularly, when it's happy to send them into futile wars that have nothing to do with us, but then when they come home, the moment they're demobbed, they simply don't want to know. It really is, it's an absolute shame. So we'll be doing something about it, and actually we're going to be starting now. Not now, don't worry, I'm not asking for any money. It's just something to point out to you, so I don't forget. Where's Mr. Kemp gone? Where's Arthur? Arthur, where are you? Right, Arthur, I have here a couple of books which have been donated, not to us, but I'd like you to put these on eBay, because it's two books by Andy McNabb, and he's been approached by Help for Heroes, which several of our people are involved with, and he's actually Help for Heroes, Best Wishes, Andy McNabb. Yeah. So we've got two autograph books. I'd like you please to put those on, well, advertise on the website for sale to the highest bidder,
No problem.
and put that up. The press will crawl all over Andy McNabb, and so on and so forth, and squeal, and so on, and hopefully two things. One, we will raise a decent couple of £100 for these chaps who really need and deserve and are entitled to our help. And secondly, it'll draw attention, I hope, in England, as has already been the case in Scotland, that there's only one party prepared to do anything for these young lads and the ones who've been back here for too long without being looked after by anybody else, and that's the British National Party. So good luck with that, Mark.
Thanks to our chairman, Nick Griffin. I would now like to introduce our last speaker, Mr. Arthur Kemp.
Legion rede, culitas varias, legion rede. Varus, where are my legions? Where are my legions? That was what the Roman Emperor Octavian Augustus cried out in Rome exactly to the week 2,000 years ago. And he cried out after the Battle of Teutoburger Forest, where 3 entire Roman legions had been slaughtered by a numerically inferior German resistance. It was the Roman army's attempt to take over all of Germany. And one man, Hermann Cherusa, a German prince, had devised a cunning plan, because he'd been raised with the Romans, but he'd remained loyal to his own people. And Hermann Cherusa, under his Romanized name Arminius, had enlisted in the Roman army, and he'd learned the ways of the enemy, and he'd realized that although they were numerically superior, although they were technologically superior, although they had all the things going for them which made them the world power that they were, he, by using their own tactics and a bit of his own ingenuity, turned the tables on the mighty Roman Empire. He joined with them, he became a commander in the Roman occupying army east of the Rhine, and he bided his time and he waited, and he organized the German princes, his fellow German princes, into an underground resistance. And at the moment which he thought it was appropriate, he set off a fake uprising several miles to the east of the main Roman camp. And the Roman general in charge of the Roman armies, the 3 legions, the 6th, the 17th, 18th and 19th legions, set off through the forest which Hermann had planned. And Hermann knew that his forces were too few to take on the Romans in open battle. So what he did, he made sure that they marched through the Teutoburger forest, where he would have the advantage, where he would be able to deploy his German soldiers in such a way that the battle which carried on in this week, September 9 AD, this very week, ladies and gentlemen, 2,000 years ago, so that he could deploy his German forces in such a way that slowly but surely, by attacking from the left and then from the right and denying the Romans sleep, he eventually destroyed the entire 3 legions of 20,000 Roman soldiers. So that the Roman historian Tacitus wrote that 50 years later, they were still finding Roman soldiers' skulls nailed to the trees as a warning. And the great defeat of 9 AD, the Battle of Teutoburger Forest, marked the turning point in the Roman expansion east of the Rhine. After that great battle, Rome never succeeded in conquering the Germans, and the final eastern frontier of the Roman Empire was set at the Rhine River. And this is the lesson we can learn from Hermann Cherusa and from Octavian Augustus. Because after the events of the past week and the Equalities and Human Rights Commission court case, which you all know about and you've all heard about, not that I wish for a minute to compare Trevor Phillips or Gordon Brown with Octavian Augustus, but I can quite see by the end of this, that this charade has played out, that Gordon Brown will be crying, "Trevor Phillips, where are my legions? Where are my legions?" Because they have made the single greatest mistake which the Romans made. The biggest error that they have ever made in their lives has been this court case against the British National Party. And the error is, first of all, their biggest mistake is that they think they can legislate the British National Party out of existence. And they can never do that, because the British National Party is even above politics. It is a movement which is designed to ensure the survival of the British people as the ethnic majority population in this country. No fake equality law, no draconian measure will ever take that spirit away, because that is what drives everyone in this party, the understanding and the knowledge and the desire to see Britain remain British. And this is not some type of radical demand. This is not racist. This is not extreme. These same people who are trying to deny us our right to be ethnically British in this country, these same people run around all over the world protesting the rights of indigenous peoples. You will see them campaigning for the Indians in the Amazon jungle. You will see them campaigning for the Tibetans in Tibet. And they'll campaign and they'll complain about Tibet. Look what's happening in Tibet. The Chinese are moving in their hundreds of thousands, and they're displacing the Tibetan people of possession of Tibet. That is a crime, they will say, and it is true. And they will run around and they will organize international aid campaigns to help the Indians in the Amazon jungle. 2 years ago we had a delegation of some feathered people up from somewhere in the Amazon jungle outside the Houses of Parliament, and MPs came out and they grovelled in front of these people and they said, "We will do everything in our power to ensure that your culture remains yours and your territory remains inviolate from the Amazon loggers and those who would seek to destroy your culture." And we're not arguing with that, because they have a right to do that. They have a right. But British people have that right in this country as well. And no legislation, no fake hypocritical legislation is going to deny us that right. And let us make this very clear, ladies and gentlemen, that no matter what happens over the next couple of weeks with this court case and the various machinations which come from it, no matter what happens, the British National Party will never abandon its core belief that our aim is to ensure that Britain remains British. That will never change. But like Varus, like the Roman general Varus, they've set off and they don't realize that they run into their own self-set ambush. It's their own ambush. They don't understand it. And Nick Griffin has played this game of poker in such a way that he has outmaneuvered not only the EHRC but the government itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm telling you that when the chips are down and they look at their hand, and they will see that they have lost. Because by their own stroke, they will remove the last club with which they strike this party to call us a racist party. Never mind their own organisations, the Black Socialist Society, which is an official part of the Labour Party. Never mind their own organisations cater exclusively for all other ethnic groups. Never mind that. The fact is that the new equality law being brought into Parliament by Harriet Harman, Harperson as they say, to be correct, that new equality law would have made this whole issue irrelevant anyway. It would have outlawed any ethnic organisation. By bringing this court case, they have attempted to bankrupt the British National Party. But ladies and gentlemen, all of you here know, and I'm sure all of you were maybe a little bit surprised to see that statement come out on Thursday. Maybe some of you were. I want to explain to you the rationale behind that. This was in a situation which was going to arise no matter what. No matter what. And what we had to do, and what Nick Griffin had to do, was to show the party membership that we would fight it, but we're not going to commit suicide over something which would have been law in any event in 2 or 3 months' time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Common sense, ladies and gentlemen. And now you'll get the doubting Thomases running around saying, oh, the ethnics are going to join the BNP. We're going to be overrun. Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this, that the policies of the British National Party are voted on by the voting members who come to the annual National Conference. And to become a voting member, you've got to have 2 years active service of leafleting, campaigning. You've got to be recommended by your local organiser, and you've got to have attended training schools. So you're telling me that the government is going to pay 15,000 ethnics to join the British National Party and campaign for us for 2 years in order to just get a voting membership, to get on the voting membership list? You are kidding yourself. They're not going to do it. We will brush this assault aside, and we will concentrate on getting our message out. And our message will remain that we have a policy which is guaranteed, which is designed to guarantee that the population of this island remains ethnically majority British. That does not mean that you hate anybody else. And I'll say this again, and I'll say it from every platform that we get. If anyone is in this room who hates anybody else just because of the colour of their skin or their religion, you're in the wrong party. There's another group or groups which will cater for you, but we are not motivated by the hate of anybody. We are motivated by the love to preserve what we have.
Yes.
That is a right. That is a right which we freely grant to every other nation on earth, without exception. People run around and say, oh, but you're anti-Muslim, you're not anti-Muslim, ladies and gentlemen, not at all. You know, I don't have a problem with people, if they want to make their women dress up like black postboxes, if they want to run around and cut up each other's hands for minor infractions, if they want to have peculiar systems of law and government. That's fine. I'm not going to go to Saudi Arabia and tell them they're not allowed to do it there, but they don't come here and tell us what to do. We will strike an accord with the Muslim world. When I say we, I mean the British National Party government, which will come. We will strike an accord with the Islamic world, that we will agree not to meddle in their internal affairs anymore, as this traitorous Tory and Labour and Bush and whatever governments have done. We will not interfere in their internal affairs on two conditions. Number one, they don't interfere in ours, and they take back their excess populations. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't think that's extreme at all. Because let's be honest, who would go to Saudi Arabia and tell the Saudis that in 20 years' time their capital city will no longer be a Saudi Muslim city but would be a British Christian white city? No one would say that to them. No, they would think you were mad. In Saudi Arabia, the home of Islam, it's illegal to even build a church, a Christian church, or hold a Christian service. But you know who's financing all the mosques being built in Britain?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. No, ladies and gentlemen, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. They can have their culture in their country, and we will have our culture in our country. It is a right. It is a right accorded to every indigenous people on this planet, not by us, but by international law. The United Nations Charter on Indigenous People says that every indigenous nation has the right to be protected against false integration and the dispossession of their territorial integrity. And it says that in those words. And that is the basis of our claim. That is the basis of our policy. That is the basis of our desire to see our nation preserved. It's not. It is not something which can be legislated away. It is not something which even a handful of ethnics, if they should decide to join the British National Party, not even they can change. Because quite frankly, if someone wants to join the British National Party and who endorses our policies of ensuring that we remain the majority population, then let's take their money, by God.
Yeah.
Just as long as they understand very, very clearly that this is our policy and it will not change. It will not change. I can see the time coming soon when Gordon Brown and David Cameron will rend their clothes like the Emperor Augustus and cry, Trevor Phillips, where are our legions? Because this ambush which they've set for themselves will single-handedly take away the last weapon they have against us. What will stop Nick Griffin appearing on Question Time and saying, I stand for the indigenous people of Britain and I'm not a racist? What are they going to say to that now? And this is why they're going to go into overdrive. Because they already know, you can see it in some of their blogs and some of their commentators, they've already acknowledged that this is an own goal. They've already seen it, and they understand its implications. And now, ladies and gentlemen, you will see them go into overdrive. Normally, we're at the end of the smears, at the end of an election campaign. Have you noticed this time round, the smears haven't stopped, they've just got more and more and more. Yes. I was reading in the Daily Mirror just the other day that apparently we're going to punish girls who have short skirts. did anyone see that?
Yes.
We're going to punish girls who have short skirts.
And place a curfew on single mothers, apparently.
Curfew on single mothers, all sorts of stuff. It's just getting more and more bizarre. The good news about it, ladies and gentlemen, is as the more bizarre it gets, the more unbelievable it gets. And the less and less notice people take of the nonsense and the lies which are spewed out, and they can see it coming in front of their very own eyes. The time has come where we have broken through the glass ceiling, the artificial glass ceiling, which the media set for us. The far left, the extremist communist cranks who masquerade as anti-racist organizations, they started their campaign in the January this year as "Don't awaken to the Griffin nightmare." That was their campaign. And they had a picture of Edward Munch's painting the scream, the howl. So ooh, like this with that. That was their nightmare, and they tried to motivate their people with the Griffin nightmare on the 7th of June. And of course, the Griffin nightmare for the extremist far-left communist cranks has come true. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is our task to turn their nightmare into our vision. Our vision remains that which it has always been, and that we will never back down from. Our vision remains unaltered. Our course and our direction are set. We may currently, like Arminius, Hermann Cherusa, be numerically outnumbered, but we have the tactics, we have the skills, and we have the leadership to deploy our forces in such a way that we will now decide when the attack goes in and when it does not. Arminius, or Hermann Cherusa, was actually, he didn't know it at the time, but he was carrying out the philosophy of the Chinese philosopher general Sun Tzu, who wrote a book called The Art of War. It's a thin book, you can find it on the internet. It's well worth reading. And Sun Tzu wrote this book. He wrote it on how to win battles and how to win wars. Well worth reading. It's the principles that you can apply to business, to your own personal life, to all sorts of things. But the most important lesson that Sun Tzu spelled out in his book was that the general who wins a battle is the general who decides the battlefield, who maps out the battlefield. If you walk into a battlefield where the enemy has mapped it out, even if you are numerically strong, you will be defeated. And the example he used was, if you are numerically inferior, you lure the enemy into a valley and you post your archers along the top of the hills and you rain them with arrows before they close to fighting distance, so you decimate their ranks before they even get to you, and you will win. Time has long passed where the enemy could dictate the battlefield for the British National Party. This court case has taken away their last ability to determine the battlefield. From now on, we will determine the battlefield. From now on, we will decide when to attack and when to retreat and when to stand down and when to plunge home for the final victory. Because make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the British National Party is not just concerned with practical day-to-day politics. Of course we are. We have councillors and now MEPs who will attend to the day-to-day practical politics, councillors, county councillors, members of the London Assembly. They will attend to the day-to-day practical politics, but never forget that our driving force is actually above politics. It is something which transcends politics itself. It is the very struggle for the existence of our people.
Yes.
And to those who think that we are going to back down because of some silly court case, those who think that we're going to back down and splinter and fracture apart just because some well-disposed ethnics might join the party, they are kidding themselves. We know where we are going, and we will not be deflected.
Excellent.
Let the enemies of Britain know that this party is on a march, and this march will not stop until we have won, because there is no alternative to victory. Do not think that we will be minoritized like the Indians in America and shuffled into a location and kept and subsidized by the conquering people. Our victory will ensure the survival of our people, or our defeat will ensure the extinction of our people. We have no choice but to push on. And I can see from the growing support all around the country. They said we couldn't do it. We upped our vote on a lowered turnout. They said we couldn't do it. And we've done it time and time and time again. And that is because, ladies and gentlemen, we have people like you. Because the leadership of the party, as I'm sure Nick will readily acknowledge, they can only provide the course, the steering, the direction. The crew of the ship are the people who matter, and you are the crew. And you are the people who will determine whether this nation lives and whether this party is successful or not. And you do this not because Nick Griffin asks you, not because anyone here asks you to do it. You do it because if you don't do it, your children and your grandchildren will not have a nation or a people or a culture in which to live.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
The enemies of this nation, and they are the triple-headed Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, whatever parties they've got. They're all the same. The enemies of this nation know that the British National Party represents the only true alternative in British politics. They know that when we stand, everyone looks. They know that when we talk, everyone listens. And they are petrified of it, because they can hear, they can see each election, our votes growing, and more people getting elected, and they can hear in the far off distance, they can hear it, the sounds of their trials for the treason which they've committed to this nation. And I don't use those words lightly. I don't use those words lightly. But we will ensure that every single politician who has gone out of their way to actively promote the death of this nation will be called to account for their crimes. Whether it be forcing our young kids to go to illegal and immoral wars overseas, and ensuring that 400 of them die for a war which has nothing to do with us, or whether it even be all the young white kids who've been killed in ethnically related murders and crime across this country, or whether it be those who've sold off our national assets to foreigners who've then exploited our own people for financial gain. All of these crimes have been noted down and they will be called to account for it. But most importantly, the real reason why they hate us, because they know that when the day comes that the British National Party makes that step from official opposition to the government, the day comes when Nick Griffin walks into 10 Downing Street, their era will be at an end once and for all, just like the Romans knew that the battle 2,000 years ago meant the end of their advance into Germany. And they know when that day comes, it will once again be an issue of pride to say, this is Britain, and we are not ashamed of it. We who have contributed so much to the world across the globe, we have shaped the very face of civilization. The enemy know that when that day comes, the British National Party will be the party that carries the flag of Britain forward. And once again, we will be proud to say, Great Britain.
Hear, hear.
Many thanks to Arthur and Nick. Just to end tonight, we are going to pass a collection plate round. if people would like to give generously, we do need to raise some serious money to fight the general election, which will be coming before May 2010. So please give as generously as you can. Once again, I'd like to give a big round of applause to both our guests tonight, Arthur Thompson